Hi, everybody. It's Doc Eddie, Street Fight Politics, and we're back for another session. Hold on a second. I think I hear some echo here. I'm going to put on my headphones because my tech bros told me that's what I'm supposed to do. Now,
Headphones are
I
the
can
way to
hear.
go.
So anyway, I've got that on, so no more echoes. Anyway, I titled this September 10th, 2001. It was for that was a very special place and time. As far as myself, that was a night like any other night. I think, came home, had dinner, did some stuff, and that was the time that I was actually getting into snow skiing. And so, this is one of the early forums they had about skiing. So, I was going back and forth, on the ins and outs of what type of boots to get. And so, I went for hours like that. And I remember that, I stayed up late enough that Jay Leno was on. And, the only thing I can remember about it was his guest was Anne Heche. And it was just this, nothing interview. I mean, it was just like, you look back on it, and I can't remember what they talked about. I also remember it was just like total drivel. Go to bed, wake up the next morning, the world's changed. And I think we're right now at the point where we're getting ready to change the world again. That we have a massive attack coming on our economy, the world's economy, that is just as big as people getting in a plane and flying it into buildings. We have someone who thinks that, is trying to gaslight you that imposing 25 and 50% tariffs on everything you use is not a tax increase. It's not going to take money out of your pocket and give it to him so that he can turn around and give it to his billionaire buddies. And unlike a targeted tax increase that you would do, like, say, on multi-billionaires like Elon Musk, this hits everybody. If you buy anything in a grocery store, this time of year, we're importing, most of our vegetables from either Canada, Mexico, and South America, almost 100% of them. You look at, our cars, I will hand it that the only supposed 100% American built car is Tesla. It's built in California. Not 100% of the parts are manufactured here, but we'll give them we'll slide that to them. The rest of everybody else is integrated into the world economy. And those cars, like you look at Stellantis, Ford, GM, they're right around 50% for US made content. The rest of it comes from elsewhere, which means that, say you have a $40,000 car, 20,000 of it is foreign content, 25% tariff. You just added $4,000 in tariffs to the cost of that car. Now, I was out, socializing with one of my Trump bro friends, who, I believe it or not, I actually do have one, who does finances, and was trying to tell me the ins and outs of why tariffs are actually a good thing, because most of these tariffs are going to be paid by the upper 10% who do most of the discretionary buying anyway, which is true. I mean, it's like most of the cars start out, somebody in Scottsdale or Paradise Valley buys it. 2 years later, somebody, they trade it in, it moves down the chain. And after 5 or 6 years, it gets down low enough that people who aren't in the discretionary income class can actually buy the car or the truck, whatever it may be. You're now going to make it so that, one, I'm not going to take an $80,000 vehicle, which is, in my mind, is just staggering. That literally is how much I paid for my first house.
That's a lot of money.
$12,000 to $15,000 on top of that, and a tax that we're paying the government. I'm not doing that.
Nope.
the places this going to affect is just, I can't, it's not, they're almost too broad to really get into it, but it's going to affect every part of our economy. It's going to make it so that it's going to take money out of the people that can least afford it. It's going to take jobs away from auto workers, because if you're not, if all of a sudden you're selling less cars because of these tariffs, guess what? They're not going to make as many cars. They don't need as many employees. And that filters all the way down the line, because if you don't have employees assembling the cars, then you don't have employees at the other plants that make the parts that go in it. Now, all of a sudden, you don't need as much iron, aluminum, other metals that go into the cars. It's just a vicious cycle. And once you get this started, it's really hard to stop. It's really hard to stop. If you go back and look at every time in this country that we have used tariffs, either in a punitive way, to protect our industry, or like McKinley did back in 1880s, 1890s, to use it sort of as a placeholder for taxes. Well, and Trump holds them out as like this great example of something that we're supposed to go back and look fondly on. Well, McKinley was a two-term guy. His first 4 years, these tariffs were a disaster. We went through 2 snap depressions, not recessions, depressions. So for his second term, he got rid of all the tariffs and the economy took off, and literally kept going all the way till the next big depression, which happened in 1929, when what did they do? Hoover put out the Smoot-Hawley tariffs, which were punitive tariffs designed to protect American industry. And it's not like everybody's going to sit there and not fight back. They retaliate. And so before you know it, all those farmers that were wanting to export all that grain, well, they didn't do it back then, and they're not doing it now. We now have farmers all over the Midwest that have realized that there's no market for their wheat, their soybeans, their corn. The corporate mega farms can withstand this, but what they call the family farmer, who probably owns anywhere from 500 to 2,000 acres, which sounds like a lot of land, but when you're growing wheat, it's not a lot. They're at the point now that they're so small that they can no longer grow row crops profitably, and that's all the grain crops. Not one is profitable right now at that time. So anyway, it's March 31st, 2025, which is the new September 10th, 2001. And that's where we are. Catherine, how old were you back then?
I was 12. I was in 7th grade, and the night beforehand was actually kind of a weird day for my family, because a family friend had unfortunately passed away in like a very tragic motorcycle accident. He was like 21 years old, super sad, but he happened to live in Bayonne, New Jersey. So he passes away the day before. A day or two, about 2 days later, is his services. And since he was from Bayonne, that is where, unfortunately, a lot of the people who died during 9/11 were brought to Bayonne for overflow, because there wasn't enough space in Manhattan. And so it was like we also had to go to something at a funeral home in this place, and we had to drive over the bridge, and just there was still like dust everywhere. Like the city was just like nothing I had ever seen before. And I lived close to New York City. We only lived about a half an hour away. So there was kids in my school, whose parents were there. There was a girl that her dad passed away. They named the street after him. So it had a big, as a millennial, it had a big impact on my life, and definitely just sort of the way that, I viewed the rest of the world. it's actually around the time that I became very like politically aware and anti-war. And so it contributed a lot to how I think politically. And I think, you know, for a lot of millennials, it definitely kind of makes us have a unique perspective, kind of having that childhood in the 90s where things were comparatively really, really good in the United States. And then sort of going into that early aughts period where we have 9/11, all of a sudden everything's really scary. We're at war. There's a lot of, you know, xenophobia, a lot of, you know, anti-Muslim rhetoric, and the Bush years. So, you know, it was, oh, hi, Louie.
Hey, sorry guys.
So I kind of, you know, when you were saying that today was kind of like that in a way, I was thinking about how it sort of changed the like social and economic trajectory for my generation. And in a lot of ways, it's like now we're kind of getting hit again with something where we started off at kind of a disadvantage because of stuff that was going on then. And now it's, you know, making it more difficult for people to get ahead. And, you know, like you were saying with the discretionary spending and stuff like that, if it's already something that, like getting a car or buying a house, if that's already something that only the top 10% of earners can reasonably do, now we're adding on that tariff. It's like, then those people are getting like the used cars and the starter homes and the stuff that would normally go to the people that are just below them. So it's like, it's going to make the chasm even bigger between, you know, people who can and people who can't. And, you know, so I appreciate your analogy because I think it fits pretty well.
Let me just catch you up on this. We've been,
Yeah.
you know, I said, you know, today, March 31st, to me is like September 10th, 2001. You know, it's a completely normal day. You know, I'm not sure what you were doing, but now, you know, you go to sleep one night, you know, you're watching Anne Heche yammer about something to Jay Leno, and then you wake up the next morning and the world's changed. You know, and we have that same potential tomorrow with, you know, Trump announcing all these, you know, massive tariffs, and, you know, it's going to affect the world economy. And, you know, it's one of those things that once you start spiraling it, you know, it's hard to stop.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, you know, that's, I mean, you're right. You go to bed one night, you know, you look either on social media or you click on a news source and there's just something that's constantly changing. It's just part of that chaos, I think, that sometimes intentionally they create, sometimes unintentionally, but it definitely exists and it's real. And you're right. I mean, it could be something either on you know, Putin or the tariffs, or there was something today about Harvard reviewing like $10 billion in grants and contracts or something like that. So it's all over the place. And you're right. I mean, it's hard to keep up with it. It's to a degree stressful, and I know it drives people nuts.
Well, it's like, you know, we haven't beat that topic to death because we're going to be, you know, next week we're going to be talking about, you know, the first, you know, after the bomb goes off, you know, what happened a week from now. But Christine's actually got a really interesting topic that I want, you know,
Sure.
her expertise in this. And that's where she and I were going back and forth on the possibility that all this signal brouhaha was actually not an accident, but done on purpose. Christine, take it away.
Mm-hmm.
You know, my opinion on this has been evolving the more that kind of trickles out and the more that we learn. And I feel like the scandal itself has 3 layers. So we've got, you know, the exposing of what we already know was, you know, incompetent and dangerous behavior. There's no accountability, and Trump has no idea what's going on. It's like, you know, the cats are running the hen house sort of situation.
Mm-hmm.
It exposes some rifts between members of the cabinet, and, you know, maybe their views on foreign policy. And even perhaps like their willingness to sort of get involved in these conversations on Signal, but they're still aware that they're happening. And then there's sort of the whole darker foreign policy thing that's not really getting talked about because the fact that they were doing it was such a scandal in the first place. So we have these three layers, right? And, you know, originally I thought, you know, was this like a complete accident? And yeah, like it's an easy accident that could happen, but also sometimes things might be an accident, but it's an accident because an opportunity has been set up for an accident to happen, which, you know, there's lots of sort of versions of whatever palace intrigue is going on at the White House that we could come up with as to who would be the one.
Sort of like a conspirator after the fact.
Conspirator after the fact, or, you know, just, I suppose, like, for example, who we know that this idea to use Signal is kind of a Project 2025 thing. They want to keep it off the record. And, you know, it seems to be like how they're conducting business. But there are people who certainly should know better. Mm-hmm. And it kind of makes you wonder why would they go along with it in the first place? Are they thinking about how they're positioning themselves for a world after Trump, which I think Marco Rubio, out of everybody in that group, is the biggest normie. And I mean, he's an extremist, and I think he's a little bit loony, but out of that cohort, he is the one that I think thinks that he could have a life after Trump, right, so to speak. So I initially did suspect him, but I don't know. I kind of am wondering what you all think. Do you think that anybody benefits from this story happening?
Well, I don't know that it's necessarily they benefit, but it's like if you're trying to get rid of Pete Hegseth, I mean, they definitely mortally wounded him. You know, because they're going to throw walls under the bus, you know, trying to say, okay, here's a scalp. It's not going to be enough. You know, I mean, when, you know, I saw a report today that the U.S. Air Force pilots no longer trust Pete Hegseth. Yeah. And when you think about saying something like that you've got down the line serving officers saying that they are not going to take the word of the Department of Defense head, that is mind-boggling. Louis, I mean, you've been in DC lately.
I mean, yeah, it's a theory. I don't know. I mean, I honestly don't know. I think it might be a combination of both. I mean, it's like when you can start off with the intentional action and then it snowballs into unintentional consequences, or the other way around, unintentional action, which then snowballs into things and you try to take advantage of them, kind of like a Keystone Cop situation. I think that might be, you know, because I've always believed the truth lies in the middle somewhere when you think about stuff. And I think it might be that, you know, I don't know whether or not they started off intentional or not. I don't know. It does seem a little weird, you know.
Is them using Signal so that they don't have a record that can be traced.
Right. Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, that to me, that is the thing that, you know, you're doing official government talks. You know, we're supposed to, you know, save that stuff for the historians and whatever. And so you're doing this so that you know, and you don't do that unless you know what you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, I'll share something. So, you know, for the 11, 12 years that I served as mayor, there were so many, even on the local level, so many of my colleagues, cities and the state level, federal level as well, that never use the email that they were assigned officially. They'd always use their Gmail or their Yahoo or whatever, for similar reasons. I mean, if the reason essentially the harshest one is that if it's ever subpoenaed, it's not subpoenaed from a public agency, it's subpoenaed from a private server, which is much harder to get. And we were trained to do that. We were trained to do that, not because we were doing anything illegal, but because there's people out there in the public that would start requesting things and making issues. And so we were trained by legal counsel to use our private emails.
Really? That's
Yeah.
interesting.
Oh yeah. No, that's yeah. It's just kind of common practice. Yeah. Even to this day, it goes on. I already know that. Now, however, there is the flip side to that, where you get people that are doing nefarious things. I remember I used to have this guy come into City Hall and request credit card receipts and wonder why I didn't eat at the McDonald's across the street and rather I chose the restaurant at the West End. I mean, things like that are just kind of, yeah, no, really. He was, same guy also believed we had gray aliens under City Hall basement.
Well, I mean, that goes without
True
saying.
story. If you ever want a fun podcast, we can talk about that. But he really believed that. But to the point, yeah, I think there's a combination of the two. I think there are some people that are trying to cover their tracks, and at the same time, perhaps there's others that are being told, "Hey, don't use personal or don't use the White House emails or government issued emails. I mean, or phones."
Huh.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if that's the counsel they're getting it, I mean, it's like.
Well, there's two ways to look at that. I know. Yeah.
I mean, what you're saying is you can't really stop it either. So.
I mean,
there's no penalty.
No. But and now in today's world, different from back then when I was in, is that you could hack around and find things now. Back then, there was a clear separation of like Gmail and city email or whatever. Yeah. I think nowadays it's just much harder. You have apps and all that, but it's going to end up on someone's social media, as a screen share somewhere.
And yeah. I feel like that's fine. Like I was listening to somebody make an argument today that if it were just high level saying, expect that we're going to discuss the thing today, then that would be fine. So it's more about what was said rather than the fact that they were using that channel to communicate in the first place.
Yeah, that's a great point. Like, again, I'll go back to my experience using like personal Gmail. When I would use my account, it wasn't like, "Hey, drop the envelope in the third trash can in the open part," right? It was never. It was stuff, that was, benign in nature, right? So yeah, it's the intent. You're right. Yeah.
But I mean, to me, the big thing is what's the long-term effect going to be on this? And it stayed in the news longer than I thought it would, to be frank. So, it's got legs, but ultimately, I just think it's another thing that, Trump's going to do his usual thing. He's going to double, triple down. He's not going to, nobody gets to apologize. Nobody says that we were at fault. And normal people would have been able to make this go away by saying, "Oh man, we screwed up. We're really sorry. Make sure it doesn't, lie, but like, make an apology."
Yeah, to the legs comment, I think it definitely has legs, and I've always believed in politics that if you're on the opposite side, the other side, you can have it grow legs. You got to get out there and create those legs. So yeah, it definitely has legs, whether the other side creates it or whether it has legs on its own. I think it has legs on its own. It's just a story that won't go away.
I think you're going to get some indication tomorrow night, when the Florida election results come out.
You went out for a second. You said tomorrow.
Tomorrow, they're holding the elections in Florida for the two.
Oh yeah, tomorrow night. Okay, right.
Yeah, so
right.
Tomorrow night you're going to have a big indication of where we stand.
Yeah, no, I've been hearing more people actually being a little more concerned about things, just the uncertainty, the tariffs, people realizing that, there's a couple of friends whose families that I know tried to go to Mexico for spring break. They couldn't get in, like things like that, and now are affecting real life. So, yeah, I hear people now a lot, very, very unhappy and concerned.
Well, I mean, it's like, I know a lot of the universities are telling their foreign-born professors, do not leave the U.S. right now.
Right.
You could leave and never get back in.
My family is going to Canada on vacation, and yeah, we were talking about that yesterday. So
it's like, do you take your phone with you? I mean, you're going to, because are they going to search it and be looking for, Osama bin Laden's, Playboy photo or something?
Right. Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, you just never know. And it's true. I do hear stories of that. People's phones being seized, things like that. So, I mean, it's
But
not.
I want to switch the conversation here and turn over to another profound thing that happened over the previous weekend, and that is Donald J. Trump doing the entirely predictable thing. We all knew what he was going to do, and announced that he's going to run for a third term for president. And,
Yeah, I vaguely heard that. What's the background on that? I
well,
didn't.
he's exploring ways to get around the Constitution, which is written pretty tightly on this one. It's like once you've done two, you're done. There's no workarounds. There's no, I'll be JD's vice president and then he'll quit and just give it to me and I'll name him the vice president again. It's like, no, you have to be eligible to become president. So you can't be a 25-year-old Veep.
Right.
Because you're not old enough to be president. So it's pretty straightforward. But I think that this is all coming from a psychiatric need for attention. I mean, literally, I heard this from a psychiatrist, a practicing forensic psychiatrist that said this comes from little Donnie when he was a little kitty. Mommy was this cold, sterile person and never gave him any loves and hugs and stuff like that. So, he grew up in a pretty dysfunctional, childhood. And so he never got that nurturing attention. So he's like that little brat you've probably all seen that just has to always be the center of attention. And if you don't give him attention, he's going to throw a temper tantrum and start throwing his toys around until you put him back at the center of attention. And this is Trump's way to keep stirring the pot to stay at the center of attention. And this is going to go all the way through until the Republicans are probably going to be forced into it. I am pretty sure he's going to try to put himself on the ballot. And we're going to provoke a true constitutional crisis. Now, hopefully, by the time that comes around, the Democrats are fully in control of the House and hopefully the Senate by that time. And it just becomes a non-starter. Yeah,
I was just, it's funny you ended with that because I was going to say, I think the ultimate test is whether or not we can, win Congress back, because that's the literal only stopgap I see here, because he will do it. There's just, in my head, there's no.
Well, that's if he's alive. I mean, it's like, I'm not anything nefarious. I mean, the guy's in his 80s now,
right.
And he is not the healthiest looking 80-year-old I took care of today.
Right.
He looks exhausted. He looks like this is all taken a lot out of him.
Well, and the thing is, I am sure that they are stuffing him full of amphetamines or something, because the guy's sitting there tweeting at midnight, 1, 2, 3 in the morning. And the later it gets, the more insane the rants become. If you've ever done with somebody in the throes of drug addiction on that stuff, it follows a pretty clear pattern here. Then he probably falls asleep, doesn't wake up till 10 or 11, because his tweets fall off until about that time.
I mean, right. Essentially, like the behavior is of somebody that is not healthy, obviously, or being pumped up with,
Right.
And then
physically, he's not healthy.
Right.
Mentally, he is definitely not healthy.
And think about, you take off, all the makeup, you take away, the prep and all that, and probably looks.
Well, I'm saying somebody's actually done that, because, he doesn't put the stuff on his neck. And so what they did is they took this photo of his face, then, using through the, Photoshop,
AI,
the color of what was there, applied it to the rest of the face. And when you do that, Jesus Christ, I mean, he looked horrible.
I believe it. Yeah, I can only imagine.
Not to mention the fact that his comb over is getting, more and more sketchy. So.
Right. No, I know we're kind of, but it's true. I just think you're right. Like in terms of the overall health, and the person can, someone like that under normal circumstances that are not being pumped up by anything, could drop dead any day, and that's where we're.
Well, that's my point. Is it's like, he's had all these mysterious trips to the hospital. Nobody knows what medications he's on because he's never released any of that stuff. So, and the thing is, it's not the first time in history we've had presidents do this. I mean, they kept John Kennedy, pumped to the gills with steroids, amphetamines, and stuff like that. I mean, chances are he would not have made it to the age of 70. Anyway.
Oh, right. Mm-hmm.
Turns out he was, he looked young and healthy, but it was a facade because when you look at what his body was what was really happening to him.
I see what you mean. Right.
And Trump doesn't even have the facade to hide behind. I mean,
no.
The guy's 300 pounds if he's an ounce.
Yeah, and I'm sure he's not eating great either. I mean, it's just all of these factors, the stress, it is a concerning thing. I agree. Totally agree with that. And then that part of me thinks, because everybody has a sense of their own, health. Part of me thinks that it could be an element of him just kind of knowing he's not going to be around for however long in his head, and he just doesn't care.
Okay, that's where he's never had thoughts like that, because if you got him to be honest, what's an honest answer from him?
Yeah,
he doesn't
true.
think he's ever going to die.
He doesn't.
I mean, it's like when the time comes, it's going to be a huge shock for him. So
yeah, that's I've never actually thought about that, but yeah.
I mean, if it's like, at my age, I'm getting tired, working and looking at it's like, maybe it's time to start cutting back. One of the most stressful jobs in the world is being president of the United States. I mean, you look at these guys, Obama went from this bouncing, young 50s, black hair. He visibly aged over those 8 years. By the time he left, he was completely gray. So.
I mean, even remember Bill Clinton when he first started and how he came out? I mean, it's the same. Yeah. Like these people I can't imagine, what that's like daily, constantly, literally every single day. There's something. I mean,
well, I mean, take it in another direction. I mean, one of the things that I've been going back and forth on is when do things start to get noisy out on the street? April 5th, there's going to be a countrywide, for lack of a better word, protest. That's going to be, everybody that doesn't like Trump. And so that naturally is going to call out the wackadoodle guys on the right that are going to show up in full camo with their, AR-15s that, are locked and loaded. So, but, I still have not got the sense that we're closing in on anything that, would be truly violent yet. But, I still see that down the road. I mean,
there was something on PBS this week. I should find the link for it, where someone who studies how civil wars develop in other countries and the signs that you look for. And she said if you were to look at what's going on here objectively, you would be seeing warning signs of things, that have led to civil war in other countries. And they did say that it would resemble something like the Troubles in Ireland, where it would be insurgencies. It wouldn't be like the American Civil War.
No, it's exactly. It's very granular because, me, I don't like Trump. My next door neighbor is, dyed in, bright red MAGA. So I can have a gunfight right here just with next door. So, and I think that's what the thing that I keep getting is reports from people that are like the 3%ers, Oath Keepers, Proud Boys, stuff like that. That they've been actively training for when the time comes. They'll have all their jacked up 4x4s and set up roadblocks someplace, and they've been very quiet. but it's, that's what makes it even more concerning, because when they go quiet, that's when they're getting ready to actually do something.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know personally some of these people, but I definitely know of them. I mean, you're right. These are real people that are doing real things to prep for some type of conflict. And a lot of them, yeah, they own weapons. They have shelters dug, in their yard or whatever. I mean, yeah, no, it sounds to some people outrageous, but it's not. This is really happening,
Yeah. Well, God, I've sort of run out of all the stuff I said I was going to talk about. I mean, anything for YouTube bothering you that you need to?
Just means you're efficient. That's all.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. No, nothing out of the. I mean, I saw today I haven't read into it, but apparently Putin is angry, or there's some type of response that Putin gave over Trump's comments about him or something like that. I don't know where that goes, but I'm particularly interested only because obviously the whole Ukraine situation. But I don't know the latest on that. That was the only thing I was going to bring up. But
Yeah, I mean, it's like the stuff that I'm saying about, the incredible damage that we're doing to all of our allies. It's like I've got my elbows up shirt that I ordered to wear, because Canada, we're for you, baby. But it's like that. How do you do that? It's just amazing. And I mean, they keep going down this rabbit hole that, well, Canada was meant to be part of the U.S. anyway. No, it really wasn't. They were all the people on the other side of the Revolutionary War
right.
that still wanted the king. That's where they went. This stuff about Greenland. I mean, this is just insanity.
Yeah.
And they're so clueless that they're thinking, well, we've got to have Denmark come in with us on this. And it's like, do you not understand that that's like asking us, hey, can we give up Hawaii to China?
It is that crazy. I mean,
it's like, no,
right.
It's not. It's a very expensive place to live, but we like it. So.
Yeah, no, I was talking the other day to somebody about, can we undo or
unring the bell?
Well, we were talking about this unraveling of the government essentially, and whether or not that's repairable. When I say undo, reverse it.
Well, I mean, I think that you're doing damage that, yeah, you can do repairs, but it's like, when I did trauma surgery,
right.
when you get shot 5 times in the chest, we can put it together, but there's some huge scars that are coming through.
Yeah, that's
the same as you were before.
Yeah, that's what I think too. I mean, you can't undo something and then repair it back to whatever it was.
No, I mean, you can do Japanese kintsugi, which actually I do that. Where you take a broken vase and repair it and put gold in to fill in the places. And so the repair becomes part of the vase's character.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully we can do kintsugi to what's going to happen, which would be the best of all worlds. Unfortunately, I think it's going to be more of the troubles, as Christine pointed out. And this goes on for years and years.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think back to, my days going through school to earn my MPA, and public administration and good people rather that want to go into public jobs. I don't think the talent pool is going to necessarily be there anymore, because who's going to want to get into this mess?
Yeah, well, I mean, the damage that we've done is, even if we have Democrats completely take over, you have a Democratic president, nobody's going to trust that the next election, you're not going to have somebody like Trump or worse come back, undo everything, start all this stuff up again, because you've got 77 million people voted for this bastard.
Right. And I was going to say something similar. I was going to say that, we have to come to the realization that there's really no Democrat right now that people are just saying, I'll vote for that person. It's probably going to be an anti-other side vote.
I think the votes you're seeing right now are just like, no, we didn't vote for this. This is crazy. the Democrats have a real opportunity to redefine themselves. And it's like,
Yeah.
my biggest criticism, since I've, skedaddled from the Republican Party and, now wait around in the Democratic Party is, one, the Democrats will not pick a fight. They do not know how to fight. That's one thing I learned as a Republican. You want to come at me, you don't have to worry about me going to the gutter because I'm already there waiting for you.
Already there waiting. Yeah. Like it.
The other thing is that, and this actually applies to both parties, is this gerontocracy we've got at the upper levels has got to stop. Because, did Nancy Pelosi do some great things? Yeah, she did. But, she's also 85, 7, something like that. Nancy, enjoy the rest of your life. Go get on some boards, make shitloads of money you can't overspend now because you're 87. You can do anything you want to anyway. Same thing for Chuck Schumer. I mean, it's like, it is so embarrassing to watch him get on TV and it's like, we're number one. And it's like, hey, act your age.
It's a goofy. Yeah.
And so that means that, we need the Jasmine Crockett's, Ocasio-Cortez's, the rogue cannons, Chris Murphy in Connecticut. There's a whole slew of people that are 50, 40s that we need to put in situations of leadership. Because if you look at the military, they don't just go all generals and then everybody else is private and maybe a few lieutenants. Every step of the way, if you get advanced, you look behind you, and if you're a lieutenant and you get advanced to captain, you're looking behind you. Hey, who do I want coming with me?
Yep.
I need those people that support me from the ground up. And so in the military, by the time you get to general, you've got this whole pyramid of people that you've brought along with you. And that's something the Democratic Party has not done.
Correct.
You've got all this stuff where it's like, well, we have to wait our turn. And, now that I'm 85 and I've been elected 25 times in a row, it's like now I get to be the head of, and the chairman of something. You can't have that anymore, and it's like, especially for, in the Senate, we need somebody that can get on social media and television and actually get the ratings. That's the world we live in. We need somebody that can get the ratings. And so, Chuck, you did great. Please understand this is nothing against you personally, but get the fuck out of the way. I mean, it's just like, read the room. And I think that's the message I think you're going to see tomorrow is the room is going to talk. Now, and it's like, I'm as interested in anybody, and I've given up trying to predict because, man, I was so wrong in this last election.
Oh, a lot of people were. I mean, again, it's even the first time around, people, so it's.
Well, I mean, the thing I did is I saw Trump, I saw, the crowds that Trump was getting and the crowds, that Kamala was getting. And, they were massively different. So, I took that as, hey, we're on our way. Well, the reason Trump's crowds weren't that big is because the people that are going to vote for him didn't need to come out there and stand around because they knew he's a shit. They don't want to have the Fidel Castro 6-hour speech. And, so they didn't feel the need to go, do that type of visible support. And I missed it. A lot of people missed it.
Mm-hmm. There's, like in sports, for example, there's a difference between winning the game and like winning the game. Sometimes you capitalize on other people's mistakes to win, and sometimes you get lucky, and sometimes you actually win. Kind of a thing. I don't ever believe they actually just like. I'm saying they won, but what I'm saying is I don't think they beat us. I think we beat ourselves.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, then that goes back to Joe Biden. It's like you look at the gerontocracy, Praetorian Guard around him. Everybody knew that Joe was having issues.
Yeah.
That he mentally wasn't the same guy he was. I mean, it's like, for God's sakes, he's 82, 83. I can tell you, because of my medical practice, when you get to that age, you start slowing down. There's a few people that can power through into their 90s, and I know some, But most people, you're not doing vector calculus, and you just don't have that ability, the energy, the mental acuity to do that. And they knew that. And instead of somebody saying, Joe, for the sake of everybody, it's like, again, it's nothing against you. You've done, and I truly believe this. He did a remarkable job, remarkable. But he undid all of that because, like every politician I have ever seen, they're so selfish. They will not voluntarily step away from anything.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you look at here in Arizona, we had Rahul Grijalva, great guy, stayed on one term too long. And he ran knowing he had stage 4 cancer, which means that he knew he would not finish this term. And instead of bowing out gracefully, hey, let my daughter take this, as my placeholder while I'm still alive. I'm pretty sure that they would have done that without hesitation, not even thinking about it. Instead now, since he was brought back for this term, he showed up to one vote the entire time.
Yeah.
Before his death. He was here in Arizona getting treatment for his cancer.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. I mean, you got to know when to step down, and I think that is a problem with both sides, actually. And
well, I mean, what I'm seeing is, and what I'm going to be pushing for is like, you don't get it, we're going to come pushing.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And it's like, Ocasio-Cortez's campaign manager is from San Francisco, has already filed to run against Nancy Pelosi. And
really? I didn't know. Okay.
Oh yeah, and it's a very serious challenge because guess who's going to help him raise money? It's not Nancy Pelosi. It's going to be Ocasio-Cortez, and guess what? She's really good at getting small dollar donations. Phenomenal. But I think that the one thing that we can do in the party is start to push.
Yeah, I agree, and there's this, I know there's a sense of like, being defeated and losing sucks, but there's only one winner. So we got to get up and realize that this is the rules of the game we live in, and this is the game itself.
Right. Yeah. I mean, exactly. You have to play by the rules as they are, and they're out on the street, which is why we're called street fight politics. We recognize what the rules are. And right now, there aren't any real rules. And there's definitely no punishment. So we need to get over the fact that we're going to punish our own for some transgression. That you go over some tripwire about trans or gays or it's just like get over it. We've got all these silos that you can't get a Venn diagram that overlaps enough to get somebody elected.
Right. That's a good topic maybe for another session. But it's this whole like, sometimes the impression is I've been, elected, and I get it on the Democratic side, is that I think sometimes there is this feeling of like righteousness, I called it. Get over all that stuff, man. You need to support your own. I mean, they may not be the best people in the world, but who is?
Well, I mean, that's why I look at it is that, I'm not going to, if I were in charge of a campaign, I would be saying, you're not going to promise a damn thing.
Right.
If somebody says, what are you going to do? Well, I've got all these amazing ideas, they're in the conceptual stage, but once I'm elected, you'll find out.
Right.
And so you just have to trust my character that the things that I want to do is going to benefit the most people.
Yeah, exactly. And kind of a side comment to that is like one of the things that we're really good at on the Democratic side is like eating our own, and that causes a lot of injury to ourselves, I think, because you have people that are doing great, they hit a bump in the road, they have some type of inquiry in them, and oh my God, I don't want to associate.
You have to look no further than Al Franken.
Yeah,
that's a great example.
It's like, in retrospect, why did he need to quit?
He didn't.
I don't think he did either. Yeah. Right. He was good.
Oh, you kidding? He's still good.
Yeah.
And but the whole thing is, you've got a picture of me, goofing around, when I'm 23, on SNL, and that craters your career. I mean, so anyway,
it's absurd.
I don't care what you did, what pictures they have, don't care.
Yeah.
And if you've got them, put them out there. don't hide it.
Get in front of it. Yeah, no, you're right. You're right. I mean, we don't need to look further than the White House and the administration to understand that kind of concept, because the voters don't really care. Very few of them do. And numbers game, right? Like the ones that do care, there's not enough.
Hey, Susie, good point. I'm glad you brought that in. We actually didn't talk about Wisconsin. We talked about Florida. And, part of that is that you're going to get a real idea of how much pushback is coming. And that's going to come from all three elections. And it's like, they're all three critically important. I mean, it's, Wisconsin probably number one, followed closely by 1B with the two Florida races. And again, does $20 million from Musk buy you that seat? It's like he bought a presidency. So it's I don't know. But I think the people that decide that's motivated are the people that are basically anti-Elon. They may not be necessarily pro-Democrat, but man, talk about a guy that people like to hate. This guy is. I did a marketing MBA 3 years ago, and in the annals of marketing, he has destroyed more capital value of more companies in a shorter time than anybody in history, and has become one of the most personally odious, unlikable people ever. I mean, ever. It's like, talk about, it's like everybody wants to build your brand. He has torched his and burned it to the ground. Yeah, exactly, Susie. The guy Crawford's running again thought he was just going to have this slide in election, didn't raise any money until like last week, didn't even campaign until last week, until all of a sudden they get polls back and it's like, oh, and now, it's like all hands on deck, five fire alarm emergency, but it's too late. And again, the Democrats right now just need to tie everything is, you don't have to go against Trump, but you can just go out there and hang everything on Elon Musk. The more anti-Musk you are, the better it's going to play. And, it's like, here's a guy that the people that bought his cars were liberal, progressive Democrats that really believed in climate change and want to try to save the world. But, and so I have no animus towards the engineers and people that work at Tesla. None. I do have a lot of animus with a fucking Nazi that owns the company. And, I wouldn't buy a Volkswagen Bug in 1943 from Hitler, just like I'm not going to buy a Tesla from our Nazi wannabe, in a little swastika from Elon Musk. Now, if you want, the only way they're really going to save that company is for Elon Musk to invest every share he owns in Tesla. Because not to mention the fact that they have not updated their cars in 8 years, which in the auto industry is, that puts you in a death spiral. But, so the Democrats' smartest thing is to keep playing up, in fact, come out, I think the stupid thing about, burning Teslas and, that stuff, stop it. It's like people bought Teslas were Democrats that really believed in it, and it's like, it's like now we know we're not doing that, but it's like, this is my car. I spent a shitload of money for it. So, I'm not buying anymore. You don't need to buy one either. But when it comes to the guy that owns it, yeah, we can go after you. And so you tie everything into the Musk, what he's trying to do to the economy, to little old lady Social Security, to Medicare, Medicaid, the whole shooting match. And, and Susie, I think you're going to get a real big indication tomorrow, not only from Wisconsin, but also the Florida races. So, we'll definitely have a lot to talk about next week on that type of stuff. But, as far as the Democrats go, this is the time where you start planning on how you're going to change, how you're going to reconnect with your working class roots away from this hedge fund Wall Street crap. It's like Joe Biden. first president ever to go walk a picket line. That's what you need to be doing. And you need to convince those, the people that you're coming out that this isn't, a photo op for you, that you really believe it. That, one man can't stand up against $1 billion corporation, but 1,000 can. That's what a union is. And coming from Eastern Kentucky, where all my uncles were coal miners in the UMW, I can tell you that's exactly how they survived. And that's also why they were able, they weren't rich, but they had health care, because UMW has great health care. They were able to retire, and, because their retirement fund was a really good one. And that's the things that we need to get back and start selling again.
Totally agree. It's basic common sense stuff, man. I mean, it literally that simple,
Well, guys, I think I have talked myself out. You got anything else you want to add?
No, it's going to be an interesting remainder of the week, tell you that.
So anyway, just to, follow up, tonight is September 10th, 2001. When you wake up tomorrow, it's going to be a different world. I don't know how it's going to be, but we'll have a lot to talk about next week.
Yep.
So everybody, thank you for tuning in. We really appreciate it. And we'll see you all a week from now. And we'll have a lot to talk about, I guarantee you.